And we're live.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the January 27th Special Budget Council meeting. It's due to COVID-19 and recommendations by Waterloo Region Public Health to exercise social distancing and public gathering thresholds. Township Council meetings are currently being held electronically. Members of the public have been provided with the following methods: watch or participate in the open meeting electronically. Watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the Township's YouTube page. Members of the public interested in speaking to any of the reports were requested to submit the request in writing to the Clerk's Division. A link and telephone number has been provided to those who registered before the registration deadline. And finally, members of the public interested in commenting were invited to submit written comments to the Clerk's Division that were provided to the Mayor and Council prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. I'd like to now call this meeting to order, and can I have approval of the agenda, please?
Certainly. So moved by Councillor Gillespie and seconded by Councillor Rolleman that Council adopt the January 27th, 2022 special budget meeting council agenda as presented with the following addendum. 1, add item 6.4, report number FIN-04-2022, the 2022 air special area rate. Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Rossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
And Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
That carries.
Thank you. Now I'd like to do the acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Mutual people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people of Canada. We'll now pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, items for consideration is report 6.1, FD-02-2022, the 2022 capital budget adjustment extrication tools. So Christina, I believe you're taking this.
No, Madam Mayor, in the absence of Fire Chief Shantz, who's on holidays, I'll speak to the report. Council at the December 13th meeting pre-approved the purchase of the extrication tools at a total budget allocation of $67,500. We have gone out to receive competitive bids for the purchase of the suite of extrication tools. And based on the bid results, when we factor in the net HST that's applicable, we are $660 approximate above the approved budget threshold. And so consistent with our purchasing bylaw and good financial controls, we need to come before council to seek the support of council to amend the budget allowance to facilitate the purchase of these tools. We're asking that council increase the budget by a factor of $660 and that the variance for this purchase be funded from the fire department small equipment reserve account. And in that respect, it would have no impacts on the tax levy, which will be discussed later tonight.
I see no questions. Can I have the motion, please?
By Councillor McCreary and seconded by Councillor Rolleman, that FD report number 02-2022 be received and that council authorize an adjustment to the funding allowance for the purchase of the pre-approved acquisition of extradition tools in the 2022 capital budget from $67,500 to $68,160, net increase of $660, and that the treasurer be authorized to fund the budget variance from the fire department small equipment reserve account. Councillor Rolleman?
Yes.
Councillor Rossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes.
and Mayor Foxton.
Yes. Glad
That
to see I
carries.
wasn't the one who screwed up extrication. Thank you. Next is 6.2 report, which is FIN 02-2022 adjustments, refinements to draft 2022 budget. And I believe Christina's taking this. Go ahead, Christina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At our last budget meeting on January 10th, Council requested that staff go back and take a look at the expenses to see where further savings could be found. They also requested that we adjust for TAPMO and excuse me, and also move the water charge out of the special area rate into the general levy. So those changes have been made to the updated budget that was then sent out attached to this report. Some highlights of things we were able to make changes on. We were able to find some funds from the external consultants that were not being spent in 2021 because the project is not completed, to be able to pull that forward to offset the cost of hiring them in 2022. We reviewed our fleet to maintenance accounts to find some areas where there's potential savings based on expected work to be done on the vehicles in 2022. We reviewed the conference training and education. Several of the departments went down to account for virtual conferences in the beginning part of the year, but we did find that some of our union staff and the outdoor workers training was a little light, so we did increase that to reflect the need for training such as chainsaw usage and things of that nature were added back to it. We had more up-to-date hydro, water, and utility bills that had come in, so we took a look at that to project what the cost would be in 2020. And then we've also found some savings in the Safe Restart grant that will not be needed in 21 that we can pull forward. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't have an actual budget impact because we've been losing revenues due to this last lockdown and still incurring costs. So, but that will help offset that changes as well. And some other minor miscellaneous items that accounted for the changes to the balances.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Seeing none, I have one, and it's sort of a side one of it is, so the one on the $3,000 from the Chamber of Commerce, will we be using that for businesses, or how is that $3,000 planned to be used?
So, Madam Mayor, as part of that grant award, we actually have to run some programs that will elevate the role and profile of small business in the township. And it can be through several different forms. It can be advertising. It could be working with businesses to bring in trainers or facilitators to help businesses better penetrate their market. It could be running a special event that draws people to a destination that would support small businesses. So it's a small allowance of $3,000, but it's $3,000 more than we had available a couple of weeks ago. But those are the broad sweep targeted areas where those funds can be expended. But they really have to be focused on small business and growing outreach and exposure to support small business as they come out of the COVID pandemic.
Can we send a thank you letter to the Chamber of Commerce for those $3,000?
So it was a federal fund that was the Chambers of Commerce applied for on behalf of BIAs and chambers. But yes, Mr. DeRoche was very, very helpful. We met with him a couple times during the summer, and his hard work and that of his staff was able to access some monies that benefited Cambridge North Dumfries.
Thank you. The other question I had is the bollards. Did we ever find them?
Yes.
And are we going to be redoing them for this summer?
W-
Is it in the budget?
No, it's not in the budget. We don't have pricing. We've looked at the bollards and they will actually have to be sandblasted right back to their original metal state and then new paints applied. And I think we need to go back and take a look at the cenotaph and whether or not the bollards would be really the appropriate means to keep people off of the cenotaph itself.
Oh, okay. Well, so we'll expect a further report from you.
Correct. We're going to suggest to council in a staff report that some targeted signage would be more appropriate. The reality is the bollard, if people are sitting on the cenotaph, the bollards aren't going to stop that.
I think we were more concerned with the skateboarders than that, not just the ones sitting, but signage. I don't want to get too messy with signs down there either.
So there's no evidence of skateboarding on the cenotaph itself. We've got some evidence of skateboards where they've grinded on the stairs that go from the upper level down to the sidewalk adjacent Northumberland Street. All of the curbs where the gardens are present, there's actually, I don't know what the right feature is, but there is fasteners that have been put on the concrete curbs to prevent skateboarding, and they've been effective. They were installed on day one as part of construction. The only evidence that we're seeing is either people on the concrete sidewalk itself using the plaza, and then the grinding occurring on the stair system going from the upper to the lower level.
Okay, thank you. And still see no council questions. Ms. Sage, are we going to put this motion forward? Or are we going to hear the report on 6.4 first?
We can move forward with the motion if you would like. It is
Okay.
directing.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I would suggest that we have a discussion about the addendum report
Okay,
before council entertains a resolution arising from the consideration of FIN Report 0222, because
what I
the discussion about the air special levy, depending upon where direction eventually goes, does influence the 22 budget.
thank you. I agree. So Ms. Sage, we'll put that aside and we'll vote on it after we have the discussion. And next is report number FIN 04-2022, the 2022 air special area rate. And I'm going to ask for Christina. Is she here? There she is. Go ahead, Christina, please.
Apologies, I lost my mouse for a moment. So at the last council meeting regarding the budget, a discussion was held about the air special area rate, and I was requested to bring back further information on it. So this is an area where many years ago, council decided that there was an enhanced service being provided to the citizens of the settlement area of Ayr, and therefore under the Municipal Act, they were able to levy an additional fee for services over that. It has seen various different iterations over the past many years. I believe at one point there was a cost of a swan in this rate as well. And years ago, I believe streetlights were also part of it. So over the years, it has been pared down to primarily winter maintenance over the sidewalks. So what the three options that I just presented to provide some magnitude for your discussion is currently, with no changes, the budget reflects 80% of the winter maintenance costs being funded by the special area rate and 20% being funded in the general levy. If we were to shift to a more 50-50 sharing of those costs, then the general tax rate would increase to 4.3%, or an estimated $39.32 on the rural property. And the urban rate would only increase 1.5% over 2021, which is approximately $14.79. If we eliminate the special rate entirely, Those funds would still need to be, we would still need to raise funds to pay for winter maintenance, because council is not suggesting that we are canceling the program. And if it was funded 100% on the general tax levy, then that would result with a 5% tax increase over 2021, which would result in the approximately $46.48 increase on the rural residents. Because the elimination of the special rate would decrease that offsetting increase on the urban air, they would actually just see a small decrease over their last year, because they had already been paying for those costs.
Any questions, councilors? Councilor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at the proposal from the treasurer, I don't really think it's fair to charge, have a situation where, the rural towns, the rural parts of towns are going to be paying, an increase of taxes of 5%, while we're only paying, 0.1% in air. That's not going to go well for my rural colleagues. So I don't think I'm going to, really push hard on this. But I think one thing I would like to look at least, I've had some discussions with Lee Robinson, with Christina, about the breakdown of the winter snow plowing. Maybe Lee can share with us a little bit, but we're talking about, is it really truly an 80-20 split? When you look at some of the roads, which I feel should be township responsibility, such as the regional road from Greenfield Road all the way through downtown Air and all the way south to Brantwater Road, I think the sidewalks along both sides should be the township responsibility, because that is sort of the main road into Air. So I feel that's a fair compromise. Also, I think, as we've done before, around township property, township buildings, that should also be covered. So when I look at the numbers that Lee gave me, I think it works out to about 70, 73, was it 70? I think maybe Lee can tell that. I think 73% versus 80. So it's a little bit restructuring of the numbers. So maybe we could have a discussion about if 80-20 really is fair, or if we should look at rejigging the numbers to be a more accurate reflection of what's actually snowplowed by residents and what's actually considered to be essential for the commercial core and for the main routes of Air.
Thank you, Councilor Roman. Councilor Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. I was wondering, how much does it actually cost each home in Air to have the sidewalks cleared? And has anyone ever consulted, or we have a staff report on how many people actually want their sidewalks cleaned and how many would clean them themselves if they had the choice? So I don't know how you would do that, but that's a couple of questions I have. I think, the town wards 3 and 4 have been more than fair about spreading out the cost of common areas. So basically all that's left is the sidewalks in Air. And since we don't have sidewalks, we shouldn't be paying for that.
But what do you think of what Councilor Roman presented?
Well, it's pretty much what's going on now, isn't it? I guess 73% to 80. I'm not sure how much that is going to make a difference in the cost. And another question about the water rate of the fountain. Like I don't pay water bills, but is that the normal rate of water? $2,200 to run a fountain? Seems like an awful lot to me. So that's my
Margaret, may I bow to Christine to see if she can answer some of these, please? Thank you. Christina, go ahead.
So just to clarify, the water is both the fountain and the irrigation lines at the park area at the Cemetery. So it's not just a fountain, it's two things. That helps a little bit, but that is approximately what the costs are. And I did run a calculation at 72-28% split of the taxes, if that is helpful for discussion purposes. In that case, the general tax levy would increase by 3.6%, which is again based on our average homeowner about $33.42 over last year, compared to how the budget is sitting right now at $32.15 over last year. For the urban residents, because they were paying a larger share in 2021, there would be a smaller increase. So it would only be a 28% increase for them, or $27.36.
Councilor McCreary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Foxton. Right now, I'm looking at how we've got this contract divided up. Like, we're paying our snowplow contractor a total of $107,000. And we determined that a reasonable allocation to common area, which would be like the cenotaph and the ACC, Centennial Park, the bank, the library, all that, was about 20%. So right now, $21,460 is being paid by the general levy already. And the balance of that, $85,840, is attributed to the cost of removing snow that's in front of residential houses. So, I mean, I'm not prepared at all to change that 20% right now. We have not seen any comprehensive report. Nothing has come to council to show us why we should be changing that number. So at this point, I'm not willing to change that at all. But I also really want to ask, like, what is the big problem with this? Because previously, residents in these who are getting their streets plowed seemed to be fine with paying the cost. Now it's not fine anymore. We have to tinker around to try and figure out a way to maybe shift the cost off into someone else. So I was just looking at the budget calculations to figure out how much is someone actually paying to have their sidewalk shoveled. And my calculations, and Christina can correct me if I'm wrong, based on a house with assessed value of $372,000, urban air, meaning with the sidewalk clearing, would be $1,002.81. And the rural rate with no sidewalk cleaning would be $956.93. So basically, in the average house is paying $45.88 to have their sidewalk cleared. That seems very fair and reasonable to me. I don't see any reason why any more costs should be pushed off onto rural residents.
Thank you, Councilor McCreary. Councilor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was hoping we'd work out a compromise, but it doesn't appear that's going to be in the cards. I guess the thing I feel is that this was something that was established by the township a number of years ago, when the attitude of council at that time was, if air wants anything, they got to pay for it themselves. And I feel like we've evolved and we've changed since that time period. We've all discussed snow plowing the sidewalks before. We know that this helps the township reduce its liability exposure with regard to slip and trip. So that is a benefit to all residents because it lowers the insurance rate for the entire township. So everyone is benefiting from this snow plowing. I have a hard time accepting that only air residents benefit when I see lots of people coming into the village who don't live in the village using the sidewalks. I don't want to get into that kind of discussion, but the sidewalks are not purely for me to walk out of my house and walk over to the ACC. It's for everyone to enjoy. I see lots of school children from outside of the village coming in, walking downtown. It's an essential service for everyone, I feel. So ideally, I'd like to see the SCR completely eliminated. If we can't work out a compromise, then we need to look at some sort of phasing in period where we could phase that over a couple of years and get rid of the SAR. But at the end of the day, I feel it's time for us to evolve and move away from having this SAR.
Councillor Osner, I believe, is next, and then Gillespie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The thing is, if we start talking about, well, why do we have to pay for this and why do we have to pay for that? You could dive right into the regional portion of our taxes and say, why do we pay so much for this and why do we pay so much for that? And you can question every number until the sun goes down and comes up the next day. So the thing is that we have to look at things for the township. We have to look at what's best at the township as a whole. We're not segregated into separate areas. We're a township as a whole. So when it comes to costs and stuff like that, you're talking $38 increase, you're talking $34 in increase. If we're going to keep segregation when it comes to all these different little SARs, then I'm going to ask for a report that spells out what does it cost for the snowplows that leave Air to go to wards 3 and 4. What does it cost to drive the vehicles out there as staff time, to drive the vehicles out there to cut grass and do maintenance and cut trees and stuff like that? I mean, it can get silly, but if a report is necessary as to the services for each ward, and see what we're truly cost, what the true costs are to send crews out to each ward, including wards 1 and 2, then do an audit. Do an audit and see what all the numbers are. And if it works out to 80-20, then great. If it works out to 90-10, great. But if it works out to 70-30 or 60-40, well, that's something that I would like to see a report, and I would like to see what the true costs of services are for each ward. Because, if you're going to start picking and choosing, sidewalks, and maybe you should get people to shovel their own sidewalk. Well, no, I have a lot of neighbors that are 70 years old plus. I'm not going to tell them that, we don't want to spend an extra $4 a year on our taxes for you. So now go out and shovel your own driveway. You can't do that. We're a township as a whole. We have services as a whole. So I think that the SAR, I think, is an antiquated way of doing things, and it doesn't look good towards 3 and 4 now that we talk about getting rid of the SAR, because it equals more cost to them and they don't feel like they're getting any services for that extra money. I understand it. I understand that feeling, but I just think that our system is creating that feeling. Our system has made it this way, and now we don't know how to get away from that.
May I, Councillor Gillespie and Councillor McRae, step in for just 1 minute, please? Because I'm torn by this. And you know why I'm torn? Because the region, you're right, Councillor Ossner, we pay a lot of stuff to the region that we really don't benefit from, but they didn't download the LRT to us. They special area rated it, and we're out of it. So I'm thankful so much for that, because that would be a huge impact to our taxpayers. And Ms. Sage can vouch for me, because almost every GRAC meeting, and one again this afternoon, well, I said all the municipalities should be doing their sidewalks. Imagine a handicapped person, a person in a wheelchair, they're locked in their house for the season because they can't get around. There's no way for them to be accessible. But, and sorry, this is what I say at regional council all the time, but they're going to plow the bike lanes. They're going to plow the bike lane, but if you're in a wheelchair and you use a bike lane, you get fined. So sorry, my high horse, that's one of my really big pet peeves. So I'm torn by this. Yes, SRAs are sort of, outdated. When we looked at, I was on my first year of council, I was on the committee to look at amalgamation. And so we had all the municipalities got together and we had the report come in. And the report said in most amalgamations, they did area rates. And then they found out it was cumbersome and dropped them after this first or second year. So I don't have an answer to this question, guys. We just have to do it through discussion. Now, Councillor Gillespie, did you still want to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so you were next, and then Councillor McCreary.
I was just going to say, if this is such a problem, maybe we should forget doing any sidewalk clearing and make a bylaw up that says you use the sidewalks at your own risk. That would solve the problem. Get rid of it, and you could still plow everything in the common areas of downtown, but I don't know how many people walk by your house in Air. Like, really, is it a lot of people? So
Constantly.
if you say constantly, well, okay, well, you could work out and shovel your sidewalk then. So no one comes and shovels my sidewalk except us. It's the same type of deal. How many people come to my sidewalk? 3 or 4 maybe in a week, but I shovel it myself. No one, I don't get any, we don't get any compensation for that either. So is it possible to do a bylaw to say, use the sidewalks at your own risk and quit doing residential sidewalks?
It's a nightmare in Kitchener right now because they find the people that don't. And I don't know if you saw in the news last week, that one gentleman that took it down and still he got ticketed because it wasn't down far enough. It was a nightmare. CEO McNeely, would you like to step in? I've delayed Councilor McCreary a couple of times. I apologize, Councilor McCreary. CEO McNeely.
So Councillor Gillespie, there are municipalities that do pass bylaws requiring the owner that abuts the sidewalk to clear the sidewalk within so many hours after the storm event finishes. There is the ability to impose fines for individuals that do not comply with the bylaw. If a person, however, even if the sidewalk is cleared by the homeowner, has an incident and there is perhaps a broken leg or something equivalent to that, it will ultimately be the township that is responsible because it is our sidewalk and we are the owner of that sidewalk. We have been counseled by our insurance cooperative, and they've made presentations to council as recently as a year and a half ago on the issue of winter maintenance. We are better protected from a cost containment perspective on insurance premiums because we have a comprehensive sidewalk system in terms of winter maintenance. It is recorded. There is a service standard. It is checked each time in terms of activation and closeout of the contractor who's responsible for it. And it is all documented. We are above the Ontario minimum maintenance standard obligations or thresholds in terms of our service level. It doesn't eliminate lawsuits. It doesn't eliminate the potential for someone to have a slip or trip. But because of the network that we've established, we are better protected against lawsuits or mitigating the cost and settlement arising from a lawsuit if there was an injury incurred. But you are quite correct. There are a number of municipalities across Ontario that have put the onus on property owners. But at the end of the day, the municipality is still the responsible party.
Councilor McCreary. And thank you for your patience.
Oh, thanks. So actually, we are not very far apart on this issue right now. Councillor Rowland was suggesting that we need to take a look at the division between what's general, what should be charged to the general levy and what's attributed to sidewalks in front of personal residences. We have been sitting at 80-20. He would like that number adjusted. I simply asked to see the documentation. I think that's quite fair. I think Councillor Rowland said he sat down with Lee and they worked through the numbers and they were looking at maps and stuff. I think it's quite fair that all the councillors be able to see what he saw to justify that 80-20 split was not correct.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't sit down with Lee, but I did have a sent messages back and forth with her, and she did have some numbers for me, some different scenarios. So I didn't actually sit down with her and see maps or anything. But what I would like to see is that we do move forward with getting rid of the SAR. At the last meeting, I wanted to put forward a motion, and you asked, Madam Mayor, you asked me to wait. So the only thing I would like to say is that I would like to move forward with eliminating the SAR, but I am agreeable to phasing it in. So, perhaps do, something, 60-40 this year, and, next year do 40-60, and then maybe eventually phase it out, or do 50-50 this year and 0 next year. Something that's fair to everybody. But I think at the end of the day, it's time that this council gets rid of this SAR.
Councillor Rowland, should you wish to present a motion, you can do so. do you wish to present a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that that we eliminate the SAR and we phase it in over a 2-year period. We do 50-50 this year and then 0 next year.
Before I get to Councilor McCreary, do I have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second it.
Councilor McCreary,
I would just like to comment that the SAR is not an outdated notion. The SAR is a section of the Income Tax Act, and it's designed specifically to deal with a situation where you have a particular class of taxpayers that's receiving a unique service that other taxpayers in a municipality are not receiving. So what we are proposing here by eliminating the SAR is we're going to have 2 classes of taxpayers, and that is completely unfair. We're going to have one class of taxpayer that receives a service and pays for part of the cost or maybe none of the cost, and another class of taxpayers that pays the cost but doesn't receive anything. So it's totally unfair and also untransparent, because the services that are being received, and not, I think I'm getting this mixed up, sorry, the taxpayers that are paying for services and not receiving anything, meaning the rural residents, that whole thing just gets buried in the general tax rate. So the SAR is fine. Joe Martin set this up properly. It should be special area rated. It's been that way for years. That's fair and that's equitable. We need to just maybe tweak the numbers, but getting rid of it entirely will in the end result in that 5% increase to the rural residents that aren't receiving any services. They are not getting their sidewalks cleared.
Councilor Ossner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How many years have we had the Cambridge Fire contract for wards, part of wards 3 and 4? Do we know how many years we've had that? Is that something that Mayor Martin's put into place? Or is this new, or?
I think we just had mutual aid when Joe was, maybe near the end of Joe's term, it might have come into effect.
Okay, so when, as Councilor McCreary said, when Joe Martin set up this SAR, he also did not set up the Cambridge Fire contract because wards 3 and 4 were serviced just like wards 1 and 2 from the Air Fire Department. So I can't understand why the Cambridge Fire contract in its specific sense is not an SAR for parts of wards 3 and 4. Even though it's an essential service, we have that service available in our township. However, there's questions about response times and stuff like that. So, you know, a huge part of our fire department budget is for the Cambridge contract. We don't benefit from that in wards 1 and 2.
Councilor Roman.
We still pay it.
Sorry, Councilor Ossner. Councilor Roman.
I mean, Councilor Austin raises a good point, and thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, the fire contract provides a different level of service, and if you look at the Municipal Act, Section 326, it says that if one area has a different level of service, that could be considered to be an SAR. So the air fire service is a great service provided by our great, you know, volunteer fire department. But Cambridge Fire has a different level of service provided to the residents of Ward 4 and part of Ward 3. Perhaps an SCR needs to be calculated for not for the basic fire service, but for the increase of fire service level. Perhaps there's a different cost associated with, you know, Cambridge having a full-time professional fire department on availability for 24 hours for, you know, Ward 4 and part of Ward 3 versus Air having a standby service. Perhaps there's a different cost. When you look at the budget, you can see that $600,000 approximately is spent on Ward 1, Ward 2, and part of Ward 3, but over $400,000 is spent on Ward 4 and part of Ward 3 for the fire contract for Cambridge. So that represents a very different number when you look at there's approximately 3,000 residents being served by this $400,000 contract versus the 8,000 residents being served by $600,000. So maybe we need to look at, is there some sort of way of as Councillor Oster mentioned, looking at an SAR for the gold level service that the fire contract provides.
Councillor Osman.
And just to build upon that, when I had suggested maybe it's time that we get away from being a volunteer fire department, and it was Mayor Foxton that said, you don't want to do that because the costs are astronomical. Well, yeah, because it's a higher level service than what we're providing with the residents. And yeah, you know, I say if we're going to look at, and that's why I said maybe what we need to do is have a report, a staff report done on services, level of services, and, you know, servicing certain parts of the township that are, you know, if all our equipment is housed here, all the equipment that needs to service parts of wards 3 and 4, you know, it's a larger expense than in wards 1 and 2. And you know, I never wanted to get into the fact that, you know, your piece of the pie is bigger than my piece of the pie. However, it seems like it works that way when we're talking about services. Like when you're talking about sidewalks being shoveled and stuff like that, you're talking about the businesses and the employees that are paying a large portion of taxes that are getting these services, not just the people that are walking to school, the kids walking to school, and the elderly and the disabled and etc. Your tax base, you're providing services to a big part of your tax base, and splitting hairs with that, I think is you know, is not it's not a wise tactic.
I think that we have a motion on the floor and we should deal with the motion. This other discussion, I think we need more information. And Councillor McCreary, Councillor Roman, and Councillor Austin and Councillor Gillespie are absolutely correct. We need the facts and the figures and the information to make good judgments. So I think we'll go ahead with the motion first. Ms. Sage, Councillor Roman first, regards to motion.
Sorry, are you suggesting that we table the motion for now and wait for a future meeting to discuss this?
It's your call. You put the motion on the floor. I do not have the right to withdraw your motion.
Okay, well, I'll vote.
The motion, please, Ms. Sage.
Okay, so I do have a draft motion, and Councillor Roman can advise that I've got it correct. That council directs staff to eliminate the special area rating for sidewalk snow removal over a 2-year period by moving 50% to the general levy in 2022 and eliminating the special area rating in its entirety in 2023. That's correct. Councillor Roman?
Yes.
Councillor Osner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
No.
Councillor Gillespie?
No.
And Mayor Foxton?
And I'm going to vote no, and I'll tell you why. We're paying very little to get our sidewalks shoveled. And I don't want it removed. When on GRAC, they did a paper, worked out the price per household on their taxes to do it, and it was the same type of dollar figure. And still, the city of Kitchener didn't move forward with it. I think I worry that if we lose this, it would be a great hit to our people. Although you're not saying to lose it, I think a lot of people are willing to pay their fair share. Now, I'm not in disagreement with Councillor Rolleman's suggestion of the 73 or 72, 28 split. I think that makes sense if it can be proven, but that has to come back to this council and prove it. And do we have time to get that information, Ms. Robinson, before we finalize this budget?
Madam Mayor, if the report that's in front of council tonight, Fin Report 02, 2021, the recommendation is that the final budget be presented to council for approval at the February 7th meeting. If council wishes graphical map that shows, I'm going to call it the tiering of sidewalks that go to this notional 72-28 split, we can provide that in a tabular form so that council can see how the numbers were arrived at. And then graphically, council can see it also as part of a colored line on our road network. We can provide that for the February 7th meeting. And that may then provoke a discussion as to, is the 70-28 split, let's just say those are the numbers, if that is the appropriate based on the demonstrated calculation that's been undertaken by staff. We could present that to council.
And I'd also like, go ahead.
Sorry. And then with that, you've heard orally from Ms. Brox tonight as to what the 70-28 split means in terms of an adjustment from what is already shown as, I'll call it the base number right now in the in Fin Report 0222. We would show what the adjustment is if we were to go with something similar to that 70-28 split.
And I also would like to know from Ms. Brox what the cost is per household in air, what they have to pay. Lee, do you have further comments?
Through the mayor, I can certainly add a little bit of language right now. Obviously, we can certainly provide the graphic and the numbers to support it, but I can add a little bit of commentary about how I'm going to say 72-28 came about. If the township had adopted a policy in which adjacent landowners are responsible for the removal of their of the snow on their sidewalk, or sorry, on the sidewalk adjacent to their property, the township would be required to, based on our parks, the library, the NDCC, the ACC, all of our municipal facilities, etc. There's about 995 meters of sidewalk that we, as the adjacent property owner, would be responsible for removing. There is approximately 540 meters of sidewalk adjacent to schools in the municipality. And there is approximately 6,920 meters of sidewalk on regional roads in the township. So if we were to, out of our total aggregate amount of sidewalk, which is approximately 30 kilometers, if we included the removal of all of those, it's about 8,400 meters. So that is where that 28% has come from in terms of that calculation. That would be the portion of the snow removal that would be distributed across the municipality, would be the snow removal on regional roads adjacent to schools and adjacent to township property. So that's where that numbers come from. I will put it together. If council wishes, I can certainly put it together in a tabular format, as well as put a graph together so that it's clear to everybody.
Thank you. That was good information that you brought right there. So CEO McNeely.
So the 70-28 split that notionally we just talked about, that is a rework from the number that was established about 3 years ago, where the 80-20 split was mapped out at that point in time. And what has happened in the intervening period of time is Swan Street and Northumberland Street have been reconstructed, and there was more sidewalk built on those regional roads. And that is what's caused, I'm going to use the word, the shift from 80-20 to 72-28. Okay. It is largely, not exclusively, but largely attributed to the change in the sidewalk network on the two north-south regional roads.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. Is any councillor willing to put a motion forward for the 72-28? Councillor Rolleman, do I have a seconder? When we bring this vote up, if we could ensure that we can have something to do with fire services, because this question is coming down year after year. And I hope with the fire report, we also work out the expense of the added expense and how appropriately to deal with this. Councillor McCreary.
Can we get this report in writing? I'd really like to look at the map and see this all in writing about the sidewalks, what Lee just explained, so that I can absorb it all.
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, staff can have a report specific to the sidewalk network in air available for the February 7th meeting. The report will have 3 key items. There'll be a table so you can see the split or hierarchy of how they've been broken out. You can see it graphically in a map that'll be color coded. And then there will be, I'll call it the tax rate table that would show the shift of dollars if we went from an 80-20 model to, for our purposes of discussion tonight, the 70-28 scenario. So you'll be able to truth it in terms of what is in and what is out, and what are the dollar year over year implications in terms of a shift between the SAR and the general tax levy.
Councillor McCreary, did you want to speak again?
Sure, I may be repeating myself, but I would like to wait to the February 7th meeting so I get a chance to study the report, so I understand thoroughly what's happened. That's all. Otherwise things, I'm happy with the current arrangement.
Councillor Rowland, it's your call as to whether you bring your motion forward or whether you want to defer to February 7th.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm fairly confident with the numbers that Lee has provided. I think they're pretty accurate. So I'd like to go ahead with the vote.
Go ahead. Ms. Sage, do you have it?
Sorry, could I get who the seconder was, and if you could
Councillor
read the
Osner was the
motion?
seconder.
Councillor Osner.
Okay, and could you read that motion again, Councillor Rowland?
So basically, we're going to amend the numbers from 80-20 to 72-28.
So the special area rate to be set at 72 for air, and the rest to be 28 for the across the board. Which means that air is paying their part of the 28 as well, correct? That's right. So we're paying a part of our 28 as well as the 73. The vote, please. Ms. Sage, when you're ready.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Rowland and seconded by Councillor Osner that council will direct staff to set the special area rate for 2022 sidewalk snow removal from 80-20 to 72-28. Councillor Rowland?
Yes.
Councillor Osner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
No.
And Mayor Foxton?
Yes,
That carries.
thank you. We still would like to see those numbers that justify it for everyone. And we have other issues to still discuss the special area rate. Councillor McCreary.
So can I just confirm, will we actually see this report? Is it going to come to council February 7th, even though we have basically accepted it? We
Yeah,
will
that's
get with the details.
That's
Okay,
what I
thank you.
requested. CEO McNally.
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor McCreary, staff are not seeking the approval of the 22 budget this evening. We're asking that the final budget be presented at the February 7th meeting. As a component of the February 7th report to council, we will include tabularly and mapped the network of sidewalks in air and how they're aligning, generally speaking, with that 70-28 split. And then obviously that night, council, as part of the broader budget deliberations, has to make a determination whether to adopt the 22 budget, of which would include the air special area rate.
So we're all good. Staff is aware of what's required, as well as the documentation on fire services to be dealt with not in this budget, because we already have a contract, but down the road, so that numbers are clear. And so, Ms. Sage, I believe we're at the motion for 02-2022. Could you do that motion, please?
Would you like the motion as presented, or this is for 6.2?
Correct. We're okay to go ahead with this now, right? That the draft budget 2022 budget updates, operating and capital as presented and summarized in the report be adopted. Okay, so we haven't done capital yet, though, have we?
The capital report is a separate report.
Right, but it states in the motion that the capital operating.
We've got to clarify. What we're talking about is the 2022 operating and the 22 capital. We went through the 22 capital at the last meeting on January the 10th. It's there again tonight. What we're asking of council with the adoption of Fin Report 0222 is to bring forward the final documentation, which will include the discussion on the sidewalk network, for debate and a vote on February the 7th.
Right, so go ahead, read it, please.
So moved by Councillor Ossner and seconded by Councillor McCreary that Fin Report number 02-2022 be received, and that the draft 2022 budget updates, operating and capital as presented and summarized in this report be adopted, and that staff return to the February 7th, 2022 Council Committee of the Whole meeting with the intent of presenting the final draft 2022 budget for Council's consideration and adoption and approval. Councillor Rollman?
Yes.
Councillor Ossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
And Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
That
Now we're going
carries.
to jump to 6.4, Ms. Sage. And then we'll come back and we'll have a presentation for on 6.3. So 6.4, please.
Moved by Councillor Gillespie and seconded by Councillor McCreary that Fin Report number 04-2022 be received for the purposes of information.
And
Councillor Rollman?
that was the report Christina Box did in regards to the special area rate, which we have discussed. Go ahead.
Councillor Rollman?
Yes.
Councillor Ossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
And Mayor Foxton?
Yes.
That carries.
So I believe we are on 6.3, which is council adopted in principle the projects for the 10-year capital forecast. Ms. Brox, did you want to, CEO McNeely, did you want to speak on this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I could, Ms. Brox has a short presentation, which sort of at a high level walks council through order of magnitude of the 10-year forecast and sort of how it's split by thematic area and how it's funded for each of the different, for the funding strategy for the 10-year period. And then after that, we'd ask that council then walk through the budget itself.
Go ahead, Ms. Brox.
Okay, I am just going to share my presentation. So the goal of my presentation and our discussion today is really to provide an update on the 10-year capital forecast. Again, I would like to remind everyone that this is not setting each project in stone for the next 10 years, but this is really designed to help us forecast, help us plan for the future, to help determine what our workload should be and where we should concentrate on. Each year, the capital budget is brought to council for approval, and it's at that point that the projects are finalized. But this isn't a good overview of where we would like the township to be in the next 10 years. It provides opportunity for council to raise new projects, to suggest projects be dropped, or to really just provide a guidance over what they want the next 10 years to look at. Again, it's designed to provide a roundtable discussion and to just set what the goals and parameters would be. It also can help in regarding projects where funding may be tight. It can help prioritize for items that council would like to see moved up or back and things of that nature. So in context, we last spoke about the 10-year capital forecast back in August. We have updated it for some new costing that has been determined based on our more recent purchases, especially when we were looking at those hybrid vehicles. We have found the cost needed to be adjusted. When we have timing of projects, we have again increased it, and it's just focused on the fact that there has been increased cost in the marketplace for these capital items. So with that, our entire 10-year capital strategy has moved from $112 million to $121 million. Part of that is thanks to the increased availability of some OCF, grants that are now available to the township to allow for funding, and then just the nature of the projects themselves. We did discuss back in August, the one project had some development charges by accident in the spreadsheet, so that has been corrected as well, as you'll see when we get there. I just thought it's kind of helpful to see a picture of how we are planning to spend money. So over the next 10 years, 49% of our expenditures are really going to go towards facilities. That includes the projects for a new public works depot, twin padding of the arena, the ability of perhaps building a pool, and the administrative offices, as well as normal maintenance or upgrades to the facilities themselves. The next biggest section of our cost is really in our linear infrastructure, and those are our roads, our bridges network. Every year we are trying to increase the amount of road projects we participate in completing, and that again works out to 31% of our overall cost. This slide represents an annual breakdown of those costs, and you can kind of see the red line is more of an average trend of where we're at. Clearly, there's a few years where there are big spikes, and those are where we have what I would call our marquee projects, twin padding of the arena, the pool project, and then the building of the new facilities is why those years have those spikes in them. Obviously, if we decide to change the timing on those or change the order, then of course the cost would also change with those as well. But overall, on an average over 10 years, it's around 12 million a year, with significant higher in the years of those larger projects. This graph is an attempt to show you both the funding sources and the cash flow sources of our capital project. We are working towards the goal of having taxation dollars be put into reserves for future on a constant basis, so that the majority of our capital projects are actually then paid for by those reserves in the future, but it helps streamline the impact on a tax return, tax levy any year. So when you see that 15% of our cost is coming from reserves, that's really taxes that we've put aside in previous years to pay for these upcoming larger projects. The taxation section result is currently the amount that we are putting aside into reserves every year, plus some repayment of the debt, and a few minor projects still, but that's where the bulk of that money goes for. We do have a significant number of growth-related projects in our forecast, and those are the ones that are eligible for development charges funding. We are going to also have to rely very heavily on government grants for some of the major projects in order to be able to successfully complete them. I will note that we have highlighted the aggregate reserve, the Energy Plus reserve, and the Park Fund, the Park Trust reserve, because those are ones where the initial funding doesn't actually come from taxation. That comes from our aggregate levy, from our income from our ownership in Energy Plus, and then from the parkland in lieu fundings from new developments. This slide breaks down, again, we are looking at having to borrow to complete some of the major projects. Currently, we are nearing the end of paying back the debt on the North Dumfries Community Complex, and that is being funded by development charges as the project was new and available, was a new growth project for the township. We are looking at the Twin Pad Arena, and the administrative building would also require debt, and that is would be funded through taxation and the Energy Plus reserve. So overall, going forward, about 47% of the debt would be funded through taxation, and 40% would come from Energy Plus funding. Again, these are kind of those marquee projects that really focus on where we can spend money on other projects, depending on when we would like to undertake these projects, or if we would like to undertake these projects. Currently, we have the Public Works Depot and a municipal town hall project set for the next couple of years, with design phasing happening in 2022, and then construction would be happening following that. We have the design and community consultation on the twin padding in 2022 as well, with construction would be targeted for 2025. And then after that would also then be a look at the ACC and whether we would redevelop that and what purpose it would be redeveloped for. That would follow after the construction of the twin pad. And then in 2028 is the timing for the potential of the indoor pool. In order to help frame your discussions, I would like to remind you that the Leisure Services Master Plan is ongoing and in progress. We expect to have the final results from that by spring of 2022, and that can really help shape the needs of the community and what projects we need to undertake over the next 10 years. We are also completing a roads need and bridge assessment study this spring, which again will help forecast our capital roads and infrastructure projects and the timing for them. And then there is also ongoing the Public Work Depot Master Plan and a community consultation and architectural design on the Twin Pad project. I'd like to remind council that currently these 5 projects are not in the 10-year capital project. Some of them are because we are waiting on the results of the previous studies. Some of them are we have some additional assessment. For example, the Piper Street slopes stabilization has a assessment being undertaken right now so that we would be able to determine what the magnitude of the project would be. So those are where we have not been able to estimate what the cost would be or what the timing would be, and that's why they're not in the 10-year forecast. That comes to the end of my highlights presentation. Are there any questions?
I don't see any. Oh, Councilor Roman.
Mayor, by questions, do you mean are we looking at changing things around in the 10-year capital forecast, or are we just having questions about what was presented?
Either. If you have any questions about what I presented, I'd be happy to answer them. If you have any questions about what's in the forecast or the timing of it, I'd be happy to discuss that as well.
All right, well then, to that point, I guess I have a couple questions. On page 11 of the report that you delivered to our houses, the very first project is the Administration Office Project Design 1. And we have $297,000 on the 10-year capital plan for that project. I'm wondering if we should, because of COVID-19 and because of the uncertainty about return to work, is it something we should push back another year and wait until the next term of council to look at, or is it something that we are actually going to be able to make any meaningful advancements with this project? Because we're really right now uncertain as to what back to work is even going to look like for a lot of our employees. How many people are going to be back in the office? How many are going to be working remotely? So maybe this is something we need to think about And the other thing I'm wondering about is the twin pad project design. Should we be waiting for the results of the leisure studies master plan before we commit ourselves to that project as well?
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, as it relates to the municipal office project, we know that the pandemic will wind down. However, we also know that because of the pandemic, both in the public and private sector, the work environment in an office setting has changed. Technology has significantly improved, and there are systems that actually allow us to reduce our footprint on a per employee basis. Senior leadership team has received an earlier presentation where we gave 3 different scenarios. And the last scenario was, what opportunities were there for hosting, where multiple people would use a workstation and would be scheduled through the week, and thereby having an overall reduction in our future build in terms of overall space. We're continuing to truth that analysis, but we do believe there are 3 legitimate scenarios that are available to council, and the last one being the effects of the pandemic and the change in the way business is done in an office setting. It does significantly reduce the overall space requirements in that latter context.
Seeing no other questions, so did you want to, do we want to move it out of your CEO, Councilor Roman?
So I guess the question would be then, if it does change our requirements, is 297,445 still an accurate number, or is there going to be less design work required, I guess is the question.
The design work itself doesn't change. Where it does influence is on the bricks and mortar on the construction side. However, what's happened year over year is construction on a per square foot basis has gone up. So you will see an increase in the construction phase, reality of changes in dynamics in the marketplace, but the nature of the design really doesn't fundamentally change.
So Councilor Gillespie and then Councilor McCreary.
Thank you. One question for Ms. Robinson on Public Works infrastructure. You and I had met with a resident on Queen Street and corner of Queen Street and Victoria and Brampton about water problems and the absence of ditching and stuff on that road. And it's not in the capital forecast at all. So I just wondered if if we could put that in there, if we need to look at that at some point in time.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gillespie, we will be doing some minor improvements in that area, which will be included in the operating budget. So it's not articulated as a separate capital project. As we are working on issuing the request for proposal right now for what we used to call the roads needs study, which is really the state of the infrastructure, it will help articulate and formulate our future plans. Obviously, there will be road work required in that area in the future, and a more wholesome solution will be evaluated at that time, similar to what we're doing in Brampton with Jenkins Court, where we're looking at all of the area and a proper outlet, et cetera. So it will be identified in future years' capital forecasts once we have an idea of where those roads are going to come into play. The day-to-day operating budget is what will cover off the interim improvements that we need to do on a temporary basis right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor McCreary.
My question relates to the twin pad design. I think I'm somewhat following up on Councilor Rolman's comment. That was deferred. I think that initially showed up in the capital plan in 2021, and we deferred it to 2022. And I thought there was a specific motion passed by council that we not start designing the twin pad until we had the results of the leisure study. Isn't there a specific motion that says that? And I just want to make sure that we stick with that motion.
CEO McNeely.
Councilor McCreary, I'm not aware of that motion. We'll go back and search our
Oh,
records from
okay.
2021 just to make sure. I don't recall it. I know for sure, this was in the budget last year and it was not supported. So staff moved it 1 calendar year, and that's why it shows in the 22 budget for the design phase. But we will confirm. We'll go back to budget meeting of 2021 to see what was adopted, but I don't recall anything saying that it was tied to the Leisure Services Master Plan, because we did have an arena assessment study that was done specific to that element.
Okay, well, I would like you to see if you can find that motion, if it exists. Thanks.
Councillor Rossner, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to see us move forward with the design plan, because as CEO McNeely said last year, that you have to have the design plan well in advance, because it's going to take time for construction, time to get a contractor, time to get the bids, etc., and everything in place. So I think that I would prefer to see it left in there if council can see it that way, just to get the design done. I think that even if we were to design a pool sort of building in the future, I don't think that would interfere with where we have the twin pad is going to be. So I'd like to see that move ahead. I don't want to see us keep dragging this out, because every time we drag it another year, that probably means another 3 years down the line. And we're on borrowed time with the ACC ice surface. So I'd like to at least see us get the design done. The design doesn't mean we're going to start doing it right away. It just means that we're going to have the design in place to move forward when we are ready to move forward.
Seeing no other comments or questions, should we move ahead with the motion, please, Ms. Sage?
There is one.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Roman.
Oh, sorry, Madam Mayor. One last thought I had. It's unrelated to the discussion about the twin pad, but I know that Councilor McCreary and I have both raised the issue before of the signage at the business parks, at the 4197, at the Dumfries. I drove past the other day, and I think a lot of the company names have either fallen off completely now, or they're hanging by one screw on the one side. It's kind of embarrassing. Also, the 4197 interchange has actually moved. So when you come off the 401, the sign that used to greet you is now at a different location where you actually come off. So when you come off, you see a sign that says Teco Block, but you don't see a sign that says Welcome to North Dumfries. I'm wondering, like, I looked through I'm not sure if this is a PW thing or a facilities thing, but somewhere we need to include a line about getting our corporate branding and corporate signage, fixed up in the appropriate location, so we don't look as bad as we look right now. Those signs they're pretty embarrassing.
Lee Robinson, please.
Through the mayor to council, it is on Public Works agenda, and I will be hopefully in March bringing forward a report to council to talk about how we would like to address the signage in that area. The way the current sign is has been installed, it's extremely difficult and complicated to actually remove and replace the name plaques on it, and we'd like to propose some changes to moving that forward. So we'll be bringing forward a report for council's consideration at that time.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions or comments, could I have the motion, please?
Moved by Councillor McCreary and seconded by Councillor Rollman, that report FIN-03-2022 be received, and that council adopt in principle the projects in the 10-year capital forecast to inform the Township of North Dumfries' future financial capital budgets and ongoing planning and financial analysis. Councillor Rollman?
Yes.
Councillor Rossner?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary?
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie?
Yes.
And Mayor Foxton?
Yes,
That carries.
thank you. And now we'll do the proceedings of the council meeting for January 27th. Next motion, please.
So moved by Councillor Osner and seconded by Councillor Gillespie that bylaw number 3300-22, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on January 27th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Councillor Roman,
Yes.
Councillor Osner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
Yes,
and Mayor Foxton. That carries.
And the adjournment.
Moved by Councillor McCreary and seconded by Councillor Gillespie that whereas business before the special budget council meeting has been completed at 7:19 p.m. and be it resolved that this meeting adjourns and meets again on Monday, February 7th at 6 p.m. for committee of the whole. Councillor Roman,
Yes.
Councillor Rossner,
Yes.
Councillor McCreary,
Yes.
Councillor Gillespie,
yes.
and Mayor Foxton.
Yes.
That carries.
And councillors, I'd like to thank you for a great discussion. I'm glad that